Wow, you guys, this was just sad. I feel like how you feel after watching one of those dog shelter commercials. Like, I need to just watch a couple episodes of Family Guy and de-bum myself out. Hello, and welcome back to Layman's Perspective, the show where episode 8 of WandaVision really depresses me to no end. You guys know the drill. This is a spoiler review, so do not watch anything that I have to say until you've watched episode 8 of WandaVision. Then come back and watch this video. As always, if you like what I'm doing and you enjoy the content that I put out every week, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel, as well as sharing this video to a couple of your friends. It's always a major help, and I do appreciate it. Alright, let's talk about this. This was a really real episode. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna try to be jokey and kitsch like I always am to cope. This was really dark and really sad. And I really feel bad for Wanda now. Because damn. We get our opening recap of the previous episode, and just like last episode, we see in MCU universe scenes of previous Marvel properties now, as they're starting to tie things in more concretely. This time we see both times that Vision died, the first time at Wanda's hand and the second time at Thanos's. The Marvel logo this time evaporates into a puff of Agatha's purple magic smoke. I thought that was pretty cool. The opening scene is in 1693. So right off the bat, that makes Agatha somewhere in her 300s, I believe? I'm a YouTuber, not a mathematician. The point is, Agatha's old. I'm sure keeping herself alive with magic in some way, kind of like how the Ancient One did in Doctor Strange. They play with our expectations a little bit because we see that they're in Salem, and so my immediate thought, was that, oh, she's going to be burned at the stake for being a witch. There's going to be some angry mob of people who think she's a witch and they're going to kill her. But it was a little fake out because we see that it's an actual coven of witches and that she is being put on trial for something. I believe that the head honcho witch said that she was accessing knowledge above her station. That's pretty vague, and I'd love to know more about what she was doing to piss off her coven, especially whether or not it was related to that scary-looking book that we saw in the previous episode. And this entire scene is really dark, you know? Can't go an episode of WandaVision without our daily dose of vitamin nightmare fuel, because, I mean, look at this! What you say? This is some disturbing stuff. Parents, don't let your kids watch this. God damn. They initially try to kill her or depower her or something, and it's unsuccessful, and she ends up sucking the power out of all of these witches, killing them and going on her merry way. And interestingly, we do see that the brooch that her character has been wearing in all of the previous episodes in one way or another was actually the brooch that she took off of that head witch. She calls her mom. Not sure if that was her real mother or just like the mother witch. Could have been either one. But so that's where the brooch came from. Not only was that scene really dark, but considering what we think Agatha might be after, that kind of makes me nervous for Wanda and the kids. Like, now that we've been shown that she can steal the powers of other magical beings, kind of makes me nervous for the fate of Wanda and also Billy, considering that if we're going to run with my Nexus theory from last episode, remember, the children of Nexus beings are even more powerful than the Nexus beings themselves, which makes Billy a powerhouse even more insane than Wanda. Is that what this is leading up to? Is Agatha just going to suck the power out of Billy and Wanda and leave them as zombies? Oh my god. My big question after seeing this scene was, how do these witches differ from the sorcerers of Kamartaj? Because they both claim to be using magic, but they're obviously two very separate groups of people, and the aesthetic of their magic use do not match up with each other. Agatha's magic and the magic of these witches, they don't look like the kind of magic that Wong and Doctor Strange use. So I'm wondering, is it the same kind of energy, two different organizations? Are they two different kinds of magic? We're going to have to see going forward. We see back in Agatha's bewitched basement, as she calls it, Wanda's really getting pissed, and she tries to read Agatha's mind, and she says to us, "My thoughts were never available to you." And that seems to be a pretty solid indicator that that's what was going on in the previous episode, where Billy was saying to Agatha how quiet her mind is on the inside. I just don't think that he was able to read her mind. She has some kind of mental wall or barrier up that prevents other people from reading her mind. So we're going to give that a prediction confirmed. The good old counter. We love him. Throughout the episode, it seems to me that while perhaps not in raw power, Agatha seems to outmatch Wanda through her knowledge of magic and skill in general. Maybe Wanda has her beat on a power scale, but Agatha seems to know a lot more about how magic works, how to control it, a knowledge of spells and hexes, and so that seems to be giving her an edge in this scenario. As an example of that, Wanda walks right into her basement where she now cannot use her powers. We see those hexagons that we saw at the very end of episode 7 are runes, as Agatha calls them, which make it so that only the creator of the runes can use their powers in a given environment or situation. So Wanda's depowered, and she's kind of at Agatha's mercy here. She kind of chides her for not knowing her basics. I think for the most part that seems to be the case, whereas Agatha seems to have accrued all of her power and skill through study and practice the way that a student would learn from a master. Wanda seems more gung-ho, run and gun with her powers, kind of learning things as she goes along. Not so much as an art form or combat form as it is just an extension of her body. In this scene, we get Pietro confirmed. I loved that name. Listen to that, Pietro, fake Pietro. There's a couple interesting little tidbits in the dialogue that we get here. One, she says necromancy was out of the question. Again, raising the dead seems to be the line that cannot be crossed by magical beings here. And on top of that, she also says that, you know, his body was on a different continent, and it was full of holes, so resurrecting the actual Pietro wouldn't have worked. And she tells us that this Pietro was a crystalline possession, essentially operating as her eyes and ears. So he's a real person that Agatha has manipulated into using as a spy. And the question in my mind remains is that this could still be a multiverse Pietro. She didn't say who he was in terms of where she got him. She just said, oh, he's somewhere that I'm puppeting, is basically what she alluded to. That still doesn't 100% rule out the multiverse Pietro theory. This could still be the X-Men version of the character that she plucked out of a different universe and put under mind control. We're going to have to see going forward, because he actually didn't show up at all in this episode, not even in the end credits scene, which we will get to, believe me. Also, interesting in this kind of little villain dialogue we get here, Agatha seems to confirm my buzzard theory from a couple of episodes ago. I think it was episode 6 I talked about that, wherein we see that once and for all we've been shown that it was Wanda who created the Hex, and it's Wanda who's doing this. And the insane amount of power that she was putting off from casting all these spells and doing all of this magic drew Agatha to her, much as I surmised, like a shark being drawn to a drop of blood in the water, or a vulture finding a dead body. While that does confirm Wanda, I guess, as the villain, technically, I sympathize with her completely, because this episode is just heartbreaking. I don't blame Wanda for anything that she's done after seeing her backstory in the flashbacks in this episode, because it really just tugs on your heartstrings. Again, I'm trying my best to be jokey and happy, but this episode was really a bummer, man. Interestingly, we see, if I turn the subtitles on, that whenever Agatha is speaking out a spell verbally, that it says that she's chanting in Latin. And again, that makes me think of the difference between these witches and the Camertage sorcerers, because so far as I remember, we never see them say anything to do their spells, whereas this seems to be much more classic, like Harry Potter, speak the spell, and the thing that you want to happen happens kind of thing. In order to open the first door to her memory, she, interestingly, I thought it was cool that she uses a strand of Wanda's hair in a similar way to how Doctor Strange used a strand of Thor's hair to make an Asgardian modification to the spell he was trying to do. That's what I saw that as a connection to. We go through the door with Agatha's intention being to piece together how this happened through Wanda's memories. And to me it seemed like, okay, so Agatha is the veteran magic user and Wanda is the kind of rookie, raw powerhouse. And I saw Agatha's motivations being one of two things, or possibly both. Either one, she is jealous of how easily and effortlessly Wanda is pumping out this insane amount of power, or two, she's infuriated by her reckless and blatant misuse of such a large amount of magic. Or again, it could be both. I would maybe lean towards the first one based on how Agatha behaves, but I think that there's definitely room to speculate that it could be either or. We see the first memory that they go into is a childhood memory of Wanda. And right off the bat, this tells us why WandaVision as a TV show, the early episodes were modeled after sitcoms, because we see this as a childhood memory of family TV night with American sitcoms. And this served as her inspiration for the Hex. And this was the first of many different heartbreaking components of this episode to me, because what we see is throughout all of the traumatic events that she goes through, her parents being killed in the bombing, being captive and experimented on by Hydra, dealing with the loss of Pietro, she used TV as an escapism from her immense psychological trauma. And that's really sad. It's something that I can relate to, and I think it's something a lot of people can relate to. TV and movies and entertainment at their base form is a form of escapism, a way to forget the troubles of your daily life and immerse yourself temporarily in this story and this reality, and to just forget about the bad stuff for a while. There's a reason why entertainment is the only industry that did well during the Great Depression, because people wanted to forget all the shit that was bothering them and watch some good stuff. There's our reason for all of the Hex being modeled after different sitcoms. Specifically in the box that the dad brings in, we see that there was Malcolm in the Middle. I saw the word dream just on one of the edges of the box. I'm assuming that was I Dream of Jeannie, Witched, The Addams Family, I Love Lucy, and then we see that her favorite was The Dick Van Dyke Show, which was the sitcom that the first episode was modeled after. And I originally thought that this was just going to serve as an explanation for why the Hex was sitcom themed, but no, we see then that this is actually the night their parents died. This scared the out of me. I was not expecting this at all, because it's this really tender moment where the audio fades out and she's really having this moment looking at the TV and enjoying the characters, and then boom, the house blows up, her parents are dead, and I was like, huh! Like, it was scary. It was a good jump scare. This is an example of a good jump scare. If you compare how this scene runs out to how it was described to us by her and Pietro in Age of Ultron, there's a one-to-one translation. It's exactly what we've been told happens. The first shell goes off, explodes the room, their parents die, the second shell lands in the rubble, and it doesn't go off and it just sits there in front of them. A couple of things with this. One, this seems to be a pretty blatant nod to that first commercial back in episode 1, the Stark toaster, complete with the blinking red light and the sound that matches completely one-to-one, so that's what that was. Going off of that, I think it's safe to say then that all of the commercials represent different aspects of the trauma that she went through at different points in her life. We're going to have to see exactly how some of them match up, but I think it's pretty obvious that's what they were doing with those. And then interestingly, Agatha surmises that the reason her and Pietro didn't die is because Wanda used a probability hex to prevent the bomb from going off at all. This retcons the idea that we've been originally fed in Age of Ultron, that the Mind Stone was the definitive and only source of her powers. It implies that she already had her powers and was a magical being before the Hydra experimentation, and the Mind Stone just really powered her up and brought her to a different level. Agatha says as much as we go through the memories. The next memory that we see is her in, well, I want to say Hydra's captivity, but she does say that she volunteered. So Hydra's supervision? She walks into the room and they tell her to go and touch the Mind Stone. And we can interpret what happens in one of two ways. One, the Infinity Stones, which we have been told have a kind of sentience and will of their own, sensed that she was a magical being, or possibly that she was a Nexus being, we'll get to that, and went towards her of its own volition. Or she used her powers and brought it towards her. One or the other happened. It was ambiguous as to which one. It explodes, and we see the Mind Stone revealed inside the gem in Loki's scepter. And she sees a vision of someone. Now, the first time I watched, I actually wasn't sure who it was, because it's a pretty dark silhouette. I originally thought that maybe it was some kind of devil character because of the spikes at the top of the silhouette. I was like, are those horns? However, on a couple of multiple rewatches, it seemed to me like that was a vision of her future self, perhaps in her proper comic book attire, as we've seen it, with the M headdress that she normally has in the comics, forming those points. If that's the case, I would love, she gets the official name at the end of this episode, the Scarlet Witch, and we'll talk about that too. I would love to see her walk away from the show with her actual costume instead of just the red leather, I guess, that she always wears. And again, we see that she's watching TV, she's watching sitcoms. I think that time it was the Brady Bunch in her little jail cell. The next memory we get is presumably in between Age of Ultron and Civil War, and they're back in the Avengers complex in upstate New York, and she's fresh after losing Pietro. And what is she doing to deal with it? She's watching another sitcom in her bedroom. This time it was Malcolm in the Middle. Vision phases into the wall. Vision comes into the scene, and you have to understand, this is right after Age of Ultron, so Vision is younger here. Remember, in Age of Ultron, he says, "I was born yesterday." So he's displaying a much more robotic, childlike naivete to a lot of different things in this scene, which I thought was just really, really cute and really funny. Specifically, he phases through the wall, which later in Civil War, you could tell that Wanda was trying to teach Vision to use doors, even though he could just phase through things. And she ends up having to explain to him in a manner what a sitcom is. And yes, no, that is funny, you're right. And it was just funny watching Paul Bettany act more quirky and robotic. Maybe I'm just a big softie, and maybe I just get emotionally affected by things way too easily, but I thought this scene was really powerful, right? A being of magic and a being of science finding solace and comfort in each other. And he says, "What is grief if not love persevering?" Like, that's... Maybe I'm just a big wuss, but that got me. And you could even see, Agatha feigning wiping away a tear as they wrap up that memory watch. The next memory we see is the real version of what we've been shown previously by Hayward. So, Hayward wins the official Layman's Perspective Douchebag of the Show award, because what a he was a liar! We were told, and Monica and Jimmy Woo and Darcy were told, that she broke into this sword facility and stole his body. But that's not what happened. She goes in very politely and by the books, and you can tell she's upset, but she's not breaking any rules. She just asks to go in. Hayward lets her in, and she goes into his office, and they go into an adjacent room, and Wanda's shown with her own eyes Vision being disassembled. And this was really hard to watch, you guys. Not in the same way that Dead Vision was hard to watch and that it was gross and it freaks me out and I hate it. I'm never going to be the same after that. Oh my god, I'm still thinking about it. This scene was harder to watch because it really dehumanized the character of Vision. It's really easy to forget, with what a great job Paul Bettany does playing him, that he's not a flesh and blood person. And this scene really, really brings him down to just hardware. And it's also clear, by the way, that that's the only thing Hayward sees Vision as, okay? Multiple times in this episode. The first time he says he's talking to Wanda, he talks about bringing Vision back online instead of back to life. And later in the end credits scene, which don't worry, again, we will talk about, he says not, we've been trying to bring him back. We've been trying to bring this thing back. So Hayward doesn't see Vision as a sentient being at all. He just sees him as a box of parts. But what really got me here was Wanda going down and feeling the area in Vision's head where the Mind Stone used to be. And tearing up, she says, "I can't feel you." And that really, really got me. This is the part of the episode that got me the closest to tearing up. Because in past Marvel properties, you could tell that the two of them shared a bond over the Mind Stone, because it's what amplified Wanda's powers and it's what gave Vision his sentience. And in Infinity War, even in the beginning, you see that she's able to interact with it in a way that presumably nobody else can. And at the very end of the movie, when Vision dies the first time after asking her to kill him, he says, if you remember,
"You could never hurt me. I just feel you."
And now with the stone gone and she's just looking down at his empty head, "I can't feel you." I was like, damn, that was really heavy. She doesn't fly away, she just walks back to her car, and we see that she drives to Westview. As she's driving through the town, we see everyone, Herb, Norm, the delivery guy, Mrs. Hart, as they are, or rather as they were, unaltered. And in one last final mystery box reveal, we see that the reason Wanda went to Westview in the first place is because Vision had bought the two of them a home in that town, and specifically wrote on the deed for us to grow old together. Damn it, Kevin Feige, stop making me feel things! Much as this is kind of the emotional breaking point for us, the audience, we see at this point that Wanda snaps. And she breaks down, she gets down on her knees, and in an explosion of power and sadness, we see her create Westview as it existed back in the first episode, modeled after the Dick Van Dyke Show. So it's black and white, and everything gets changed. Most fascinating of all is that, again, in contrast to everything we've been told in previous episodes, our Vision that we've been following the entire show is not the real original Vision. He's a full-on fabrication by Wanda's powers. Not even the dead parts of his body mixed in with little of her magic. No, his entire being and essence was created by her grief. Couple of things from that. One, I'm going to hesitantly say now that this was a prediction confirmed for my original Baby Groot theory. Okay, yeah, we've been shown now that this is a completely different Vision. He doesn't have the memories. He's not the same character. So I think at this point that I was right on that one. Interesting again here is that we see her red energy morphing as it streams into the new Vision into the yellow-hued energy of the Mind Stone. I don't really know what that means going forward, but I think it perhaps lends some permanence to Vision's new soul, I guess. In retrospect, that also kind of answers that question as to why he couldn't leave the Hex, because I was originally working off of, well, we've seen matter go into the Hex, get changed, and come out fine. But he wasn't real to begin with. He was created out of nothing, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be able to leave the Hex. Don't worry, I have a theory about how they could bring him back. We're going to talk about it later on. And he manifests, and we see, like, honestly, at this point, I think one of them or both of them deserve Emmys, because they just killed it. Camera goes to Vision, and he displays this fantastic medley of, I just was created from nothing, what the hell's going on here, I'm alive, oh look, it's my wife Wanda that I love. All with like one acting beat on his face. And I was blown away. And as we see Wanda steps into the frame, she steps into her black and white costume, sealing her own delusion in the Hex. It was beautiful. Agatha cuts the scene clapping, and we pan around the episode 1 set as it truly exists, in color, with the cameras and the lights and the studio audience. And what's interesting about that is, again, we're getting really meta here. That's the actual set that the first episode was filmed on. With that, Agatha says, bravo, go outside, and we see her real costume as I had hoped we would during my breakdown of the previous episode. And it's great. Agatha says some interesting stuff here. Most interestingly, she officially dubs Wanda the Scarlet Witch. But the way that she says it was interesting. She kind of dances around with her dialogue the idea that Wanda is a Nexus being, as we assume that's where this is going. She doesn't outright say it, but she really edges around like that's kind of what she's talking about. And she says, Wanda, you're using chaos magic here. You have no idea what kind of power you're wielding, and that makes you the Scarlet Witch. The context of that phrasing implies that the Scarlet Witch was already a term or a being or something that existed in this universe and is some kind of bad thing or supernatural force or something of that nature. And the scene ends. Hey guys, coming to you from the future again. There's only one thing I forgot to mention this episode, and that is that we should really briefly talk about the other thing that Agatha says to Wanda in this scene, and that is that she is using chaos magic. Now, we haven't really been told that much about what it is, but that is something that exists in the Marvel comic universe, and I'll just read you this little clip from the Marvel Wiki. Chaos magic is the name of a magic so powerful that it was thought to be non-existent by even the Sorcerer Supreme himself. This magic can manipulate, warp, and reconstruct the very fabric of existence and reality to the user's very whims. and bring about total destruction to the cosmos. Again, other than name-dropping it, they don't really tell us anything about what it is or what it does, but we're going to have to keep an eye on her use of this aforementioned chaos magic going into the final episode. But not before we get a huge after-credit scene. So, it turns out that I was wrong about the orbital satellite being the thing that they were going to launch into the Hex. No. Siphoning some of Wanda's own reality powers off of the drone that she threw back at Hayward and the soldiers back in episode... We see that he and his team are able to revive the body of the real Vision. They said that they tried all different things and all different ways to power him up and bring him back. And again, like I said before, he uses the word thing, not him. We see that it successfully brings him back online. I understand that a lot of you probably saw that and you're like, okay, what the hell is that? There's two Visions, this evil Vision, why was he silver? Don't worry, that's what you got me for. If we do a quick Google search on the matter... In the comics, Vision has gone through similar circumstances before. And in one of them, he does come back without the Mind Stone or the gem in his forehead. And he comes back as this colorless, monochrome, silver version of the Vision. However, it's Vision without all of his personality. He's essentially more a robot than a synthezoid in this form, with no real soul or personality, just a cold, unfeeling, Terminator-style machine. So essentially that's what I think they've done here. They've brought back Vision's corporal form, his body, but that's all it is. Now he's essentially going to be a giant remote-controlled toy with no will, no consciousness of his own. Now, while that is immensely disturbing, and I am also kind of excited to see some kind of Vision versus Vision fight, to me, that leaves a pretty straightforward path to how Vision could officially come back. Because now, Wanda's created a soul without a body, and Hayward's created a body without a soul. What does that leave the door open to? Put the two of them together, and you've got Vision back. Perhaps it's not going to be the original Vision, and my Baby Groot theory will very much hold true, and it will be a different, mentally versioned character Vision moving forward, but that still leaves the door open to how Vision could come back. However, there is one other possibility which really freaks me out where this could go. I personally think that we're going to get a merging of soulless robot Vision and bodiless intellect Vision into one character once again. But I'm going to remind you of this piece of dialogue from Avengers Infinity War.
Might have a choice. Your mind is made up of a complex construct of overlays. Jarvis, Ultron, Tony, me, the Stone. All of them mixed together. All of them learning from one another.
Without the Mind Stone, is Vision going to be a bad guy? And I bring this up because I worry that they could be making it so that this is going to be a way that not the Vision comes back, but how Ultron comes back. If you remember the way he died in the end of Age of Ultron, the last version of Ultron squares off with the newly created Vision, he lunges towards Vision, you see the off-screen flash of the yellow hue of energy that his Mind Stone creates, and we hear it, but we don't actually see Vision kill Ultron. And if there's anything that watching thousands and thousands of hours of movies and television have taught me, it's that if you don't see the character die on screen, there's always a chance that they're not really dead. With that in mind, Vision, who we have on record saying this in that movie...
I don't want to kill Ultron. He's unique. And he's in pain.
Didn't kill him, but absorbed him into the Mind Stone or into his own mind and locked him away someplace where he could keep him in check without having to kill him. And maybe now the revival of his body without his mind is going to give Ultron the ability to come back in the body that he always wanted to. I think there's a chance that that could be what they're doing, but I personally want to believe that they are going to merge the body Vision and the soul Vision together. They could go either way, but I'm going to really root for and hope for that outcome. So that was episode 8, you guys. Really interesting, really powerful. And again, it's just highlighting how different this show is from other Marvel properties. Got me choking up quite a few bit of times. It's really deep, it's really dark, and it's playing with a lot of darker subject matter, and I really respect it for being that different. There's one thing now that I'm thinking about moving forward, and that's the simple fact that we have a lot of time and a lot of show left with just one episode. The original showrunner has said in interviews that the entire recorded runtime for WandaVision is 6 hours. Let's go back and count up what we've already gotten so far. Doing math on my tiny calculator. All of the episodes that we've gotten so far roughly add up to 4.7, 4.8 hours of runtime. That leaves us with 1 hour and 20 minutes left, meaning that I think this final episode's gonna be a big one. Because we still have a lot of unanswered questions. Where the hell has Dottie been since like episode 3? Who is Evan Peters and what is he doing here? Does Monica have superpowers? Is Wanda going insane? Is Agatha working for someone else? How many of you thought that cicada she grabbed off the wall was going to be Mephisto? Okay, I did. I know you did too. We're all looking at, we think everyone's Mephisto. Is the cicada Mephisto? Is the bunny Mephisto? Has Wanda been Mephisto this whole time? Oh, God. But this episode did answer a lot of questions. Again, now we've been shown that Wanda did all of this, but also, again, I don't fault her for any of it. She's gone through a whole mess of terrible, terrible shit. So that's all been summed up to us in one sequence of scenes, just how f***ed up in the head Wanda really is at this point. And for that reason, I sympathize with her, even though she's doing all of these horrendous things. I genuinely feel bad for her. And I'm really nervous for the character's future in terms of if she goes even more insane going forward. But that's about it, you guys. That's all I got for episode 8. Crazy, tugging on your heartstrings episode. I hope you guys liked it as much as I did. If you have any theories or thoughts that you think I miss and you want to bring to my attention, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Let's just get psyched for episode 9, you guys. It's been a crazy show, crazy ride. I can't wait to see how they sum this up. Remember, time is your most valuable resource, and I'm always happy that you chose to share some of it with me. I'll see you guys next week for episode 9.